We are less than 5 days to the 2025 NFL draft, so in today's video, I want to run a 2-round mock draft with some trades as to what I would personally do in the 2025 NFL draft. Subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. Let's hop into it. So as you can see, we are on the PFF mock draft simulator. Because this is a 2-round mock draft, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the obvious picks, such as the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward. We all kind of know why it makes sense and why they should do it. So for certain picks, I'll give a sort of a brief explanation. For some other picks, I might go a little bit more in detail. So obviously Cam Ward goes number 1. At number 2, I do think everything is pointing towards Travis Hunter being the pick here. Not only do I think they'll do it, but I also think it's just the right pick in general. For the Cleveland Browns, it just makes sense. You need somebody in the receiving room while also potentially even needing a little bit of some help in the secondary. Travis Hunter kind of fixes both issues quite nicely. I personally do think he'll likely stick to play receiver, with him being in certain defensive packages. I just kind of think it fixes 2 issues with 1 pick. All right, the Giants at 3. If I'm going to take the pick here, it's going to be for Abdul Carter, but I also do want to explore the possibility of a potential trade down spot here. In terms of who I think I could trade down with, I'm kind of thinking the sweet spot might be Carolina at 8. I know you're probably going to lose out on a number of really good players. Obviously, Abdul Carter, likely Mason Graham. Genty will also be off the board. Will Campbell. I think maybe you're going to likely end up in a spot here where you either taking like a Walter Nolan, a Tyler Warren, maybe a Will Johnson, somebody along those lines at pick 8. Maybe you even just sit there and just take Shador. So I just want to at least explore the possibility of this happening, because if I am the Giants, taking Abdul Carter just doesn't really make a ton of sense for them, because yes, Kayvon Thibodeau is maybe out the door, but Brian Burns is just a very similar player to Abdul Carter, where I just really worry about 2 lighter edge rushers who aren't fantastic against the run. Yes, I know you have Dexter Lawrence, but just don't really think it's that big of a need. And I get it, maybe you just go for the blue chip prospect, but I kind of feel like the Giants have to play with a little bit of some more desperation, and I just don't think that Abdul Carter just would make a lot of sense. Now granted, your pass rush would just be disgusting with Kayvon, if he stays, of course, probably not, but Abdul, Burns, and Dexter Lawrence could just be filthy. I guess I'm talking myself into just taking Abdul Carter and not overthinking it. I just think that a trade down might be the move here too, because you can get an additional pick while also getting some really good players. Obviously, I think the Panthers would be the team here. If I were to do a trade, obviously a pick swap, maybe a future first. I just think that might be a little too rich just to move up 5 spots, but 857 and like 114, I think that could be a nice deal there. I just worry for the Giants if they do take this pick that they're ultimately not going to be able to take who they want to take. But worst case scenario, you just take Shador Sanders and you just get your quarterback of the future. So I think we'll do this. I think we'll do 857 and 114 for pick 3. We'll go ahead and force this trade. Obviously, the Panthers need a premier pass rusher. They're taking Abdul Carter to finally give this defensive line some legit juice out the edge. So that one just kind of checks out to me. Hopefully, the Giants end up in a situation where one of these top 4 players falls to them. Either that or like an Armand Membu, maybe even a Tyler Warren. All right, the Patriots at 4 are going to take Will Campbell. It's not only just the right pick to take because of his versatility to play multiple positions, but it's probably what they're going to ultimately do at pick number 4. I just would, if I was a betting man, I would assume that they would want to go Will Campbell. All right, at 5 with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I could see this being another trade down scenario, especially if a team like the Jets really want to move up for Mason Graham, or the Saints really want to move up for him. Probably not the Bears. I did hear some rumors that the Bears are interested in trading up. I'm going to assume that trade up is likely for an Ashton Genty if they are going to trade up. So, I mean, we can explore it. I just think if I'm the Jaguars, I'm just going to take Mason Graham here, even though I don't think interior defensive line is a huge need. I just worry about if I trade back too far, I might end up in a situation where I can't take one of Ted, Genty, or Mason. But at the same time, they might be in a position to do so. So I guess we can at least explore one. I think if there is a legit trade down partner, I don't think the Saints would trade up. I just don't see them being that sort of team. But there was a lot of reports and rumors about the Bears trying to trade up, and I think the Jaguars could potentially be a nice spot for them to do so. In terms of what the capital would be, I assume it'd be a similar trade to what the Panthers had to trade up for to go from 8 to 5. My assumption would be it would be a 10, probably one of these 2 second-round picks, and then maybe like 233. Maybe that could be maybe 148. We'll do 148. So 3 picks to move up from 5 spots. Again, for the sake of the video, it doesn't really matter too much what the compensation is. This is just what I'm going to go ahead and rock with here. So I'm going to force this trade. Chicago Bears move up into the top 5 to take Ashton Genty, because there is a pretty realistic chance that he doesn't end up there at number 10. So if they go ahead and secure him early, I think it would make a lot of sense. So So that would ultimately block the Raiders from taking Ashton Genty, who was probably going to end up taking him there. I think if you're the Raiders, this could be another trade down scenario, because I think they would probably want to take a cornerback like Jade or Will Johnson, probably more like Will Johnson to be more of an outside guy. I kind of think I might just end up taking Mason Graham, pairing him up with who they already have with Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. I mean, that would be a nasty defensive line. But man, their cornerback room could really use some help. So do I bank on the upside of Will Johnson, or do I go ahead and just take the talent in Mason Graham? This is a really interesting spot. I also could go Tet McMillan. I haven't heard too much rumors about McMillan and the Raiders, so I'm not going to take him here. I think I might go with Will Johnson. I know it might be seen as a little bit of a reach, but that 2023 film was fantastic, and I don't think he's the fastest guy in the world, but this Raiders team could really use a secondary member like a Will Johnson with his upside. It's either that or a trade down spot, but I don't see any team trading up, maybe outside of the Niners, but the Niners would probably be wise to just sit at pick 11. I guess I could go Armand Membu too, because if I take Armand, he's going to replace DJ Glaze. And maybe you think you can move DJ inside, or maybe DJ could just be a swing tackle. I actually think I might end up doing that here. I think I might end up just taking Armand Membu to replace DJ Glaze. I think I'm going to do that. I just talked myself into Armand Membu. So we'll do that. All right, moving on to pick 7 is the New York Jets. I don't think that Ted McMillan is going to be the pick here. If the board does fall this way, they're probably going to just take Mason Graham. Mason Graham is a great player, and I just think it would make a lot of sense for them to do so. Obviously, pair him up with Quinnen Williams. I think Mason Graham is a really solid run defender, and I also just think he has a legit ceiling to be a pretty solid pass rusher. Pair that up with Quinnen, you're putting together a pretty nasty defensive line. All right, the New York Giants are on the board, and I wouldn't say things went particularly good for them for this trade, because Will Campbell, Membu, and Mason Graham are all off the board. I don't want to say this is maybe worst case scenario, but this is definitely not best case scenario. I'm kind of thinking about taking Shador here at pick 8, just because I'm looking at who's on the board here. They don't need a receiver in Ted. Maybe you could go Jade Barron, but I feel like you kind of addressed that with what you've done this offseason, especially if you think that your slot position is okay. Maybe I could go Walter Nolan. It feels just a little bit early for him. I know the PFF has him ranked 8th. I don't have him that high. I have him pretty high, but not 8th overall. I would be okay with Malachi Starks, but I don't think safety is the biggest need. Maybe Tyler Warren if you're not a huge fan of Theo, but I kind of think I might just go ahead and take Shador Sanders here. I know that there's been a lot of movement of Shador down the board, but with the way everything kind of fell for them here, again, this is a what I would do mock draft, so I have to keep that in mind here. What would I do? This is tough. I love Kelvin Banks as well. I have him in my top 10. And I think he can move inside to play guard for this team. And that would be very useful because their interior offensive line is not very good. They could also maybe move him out to play tackle if you really want him to. I just feel like if taking him at 8 would just be such a boring pick. And I just feel like I would be a little bit disappointed for Giants fans. I don't know. I mean, if you take Kelvin Banks 8th, and then they have 2 more picks at 34, you could probably take either Milroe or Dart. And then with your 57th pick, you can take something else. So I guess I'll go Kelvin Banks, who I think is a little bit underrated at pick 8. It just feels so rich. But everything else kind of does here too. The only one that doesn't is Tyler Warren, but they don't really need tight end. Like they have Theo. I don't know though. I'm looking at this productivity. Only 300 yards in his rookie season. So, I mean, maybe Theo could be a bit more of a pass catcher with Tyler Warren being more of a well-rounded guy. You know what? Screw it. It's a what I would do mock draft. I'll take Tyler Warren. He's the best player arguably on the board here. And I think it's kind of a need for them, like a low-key need, especially if Theo doesn't actually pan out. I think you could run some 2 tight end sets too with Tyler Warren and Theo out there. I think it could check out. I actually kind of like this pick. I'll take Tyler Warren. All right, the Saints are on the board here. I desperately think that they need to add some juice to the defensive line. Mike Green is available, but it feels a little bit early for him. I think I'm going to go ahead and just take Jalen Walker here. Just believe that Jalen Walker is probably the highest upside player. He can play both linebacker and edge rusher for them, wherever they kind of need him to do. You learn with DeMario over there, just think it would make a lot of sense. So we'll take Jalen Walker here for the Saints. All right, Jacksonville is back up after their trade down scenario, and it worked out quite nicely. Both Jade Barron and Tet McMillan are here. I'm not going to overthink it and take Tet McMillan. They could also have went with Walter Nolan too, because they could use a defensive lineman, but I'll take Tet McMillan to pair up with Brian Thomas Jr. and just put together a nasty receiving core. All right, San Francisco's on the board here, and I do believe that defensive line is probably what they're going to do here. I mean, depending on the talent, I think I might go Walter Nolan. Yeah, I think I'm going to go Nolan here. It's either Nolan or Kenneth Grant. Kenneth Grant might feel like the safer player, but I think Walter Nolan might have the higher ceiling. But I think San Francisco's a team that wants to go for high ceiling guys. Walter Nolan has a legit shot to be really good, so I'll take Walter Nolan for that defensive line there. Dallas is on the board here. This might be worst case scenario for them, like in all reality, because the 2 top interior defensive defensive linemen are off the board. The top receiver 1 and 2 are off the board. The tackles are really bad right now. Well, compared to, Armand Membu. I guess I could go Kelvin Banks. I have heard that Dallas is either receiver or corner, and with all the corners still being on the board here, I think I might just take corner. Trevon Diggs, Deron Bland cannot stay healthy. Not to mention you could really use a slot corner. So I guess it kind of comes down to I want an outside corner who can end up being the replacement for those guys, and maybe if they are healthy, maybe you keep Will Johnson and Trevon on the outside and move Deron Bland into the inside, which I believe he's done in the past. But maybe Jahdae Barron might provide them a bit more versatility. Also, Texas, Dallas. I think I'll just take Will Johnson here. I think if Dallas was on the board and if they were picking between Jahdae and Will Johnson, I think they would take Will Johnson. Although I love Jahad Campbell, I just don't think he'll be the pick there because Dallas did address the linebacking core pretty tensely. So I'll take Will Johnson. Again, what I would do, it would be between Jahdae and Will Johnson. And I just think the Dallas would probably pick Will Johnson in that scenario. So we'll take Will Johnson to be paired alongside what they already have in Trevon and Deron Bland. All right, Miami's on the board here. I just think offensive line kind of has to be the pick here. I know that Patrick Pollard's there, and maybe you want to see that one out, but I'll take Kelvin Banks here to play tackle or play guard. I know that Josh Simmons is on the board. It might be a better scheme fit, but I just really worry about that injury. And I just think Kelvin Banks is just a really solid player who did so much for Texas, and I think will instantly improve that offensive line for Miami. So we'll take Kelvin Banks here. All right, the Colts are on the board at pick 14. I know a lot of people might say Colston Loveland, but I just think they could probably wait for a Mason Taylor or Terrence Ferguson in the second round. So I'm going to pass on that. And I think I might take Malachi Starks here. I know you took Cameron Bynum, or I guess you signed Cameron Bynum, but do you believe that Nick Cross can play strong safety, or who's going to play opposite of him? I think Malachi Starks could potentially be the pick there, but also Jahad Campbell's here. And you lose EJ Speed. I know there's some people who maybe could replace him, but Jahad Campbell might just be a different breed. I love Jahad Campbell. I'll take Jahad Campbell here, actually. I'm going to take Jahad Campbell. All right, Falcons at 15. I think this pick is going to be Mike Green. If Mike Green is available at pick 15, I think it will be the pick. And I also think it's probably the right pick. It just kind of seems like all signs are pointing towards Mike Green to go into the Falcons. 16, the Arizona Cardinals are on the board here. And I don't think the board has been particularly great for them, but I don't think it's been really bad. I guess you could think about taking a receiver here. I think Cardinals fans are a little bit higher on their receivers than maybe I am, but with the receivers still on the board with Burden, Emeka, and Matthew Golden, I could consider them big time here. I also could consider a Kenneth Grant to be more of a run stuffer. I know you brought in Dalvin and Calais Campbell, but those guys are a little bit older. Maybe you want somebody who's a little bit younger while also being a disruptor early on. I think it could make sense. Would also say Jahdae Barron's in play here, but I don't know if Jahdae Barron could be that true cornerback one. And there's already a lot of really solid bodies there for Arizona. They just need kind of like a go-to, like almost like a Jalen Ramsey sort of guy, but probably not going to get that with Jahdae. We'll love to take Starks here, but they don't need safeties that badly. It's between Kenneth Grant and maybe Matthew Golden here for me. And I think if they were to pick here, I would say they'd probably take Kenneth Grant. So we'll just take Kenneth Grant here. What would I do? Again, it kind of come down to Grant and Golden. I'll take Grant here for them. All right, Cincinnati's on the board here and some good players still available for them. I think this pick could end up being a guard because they desperately could use that. And right now, if I'm looking at the board here, I could go Donovan Jackson or Gray Zabel. One of those two I think would be a worthy pick here. When I look on the interior and the edge rushing room, I just don't know if they would take any of these guys. Donovan Ezaraku maybe, but I just worry about his size, 6'2", 247, he needs to play in a more 3-4 style, and I just don't know if Cincinnati is going to conform to that. James Pierce Jr., I also don't think is the greatest fit either. Nick Scorton is interesting. I'm also a huge fan of Braden Swinson. I'm not going to take him here just because I don't think they would, although I would love to take him first round. I'll wait a little bit longer on Braden Swinson here. I think I might go Nick Scorton, who's a bit more of the bigger style guy. They say it's 285, but he's a little bit smaller than that. He's probably a bit more like 270, 265. I think it would make some sense there for Cincinnati to want to go ahead and pair up Trey Hendrickson with a big physical guy like Nick Scorton. I could also take the upside of Shamar Stewart, who he's one of those guys that like I would love to see taken by any team, but I wouldn't want my team to take him just because of how risky of a pick he is. I think if I'm Cincinnati, I might just go with Nick Scorton. I think I'll go Nick Scorton here. I know the edge rushing room is pretty deep, but I think that I can take a Nick Scorton and then maybe like a round 2 taking a guard or another interior defensive lineman a little bit more down the board. How many picks do they have? Yeah, 49 should be pretty interesting. They can address another big time need. So we'll take Nick Scorton here. He's still young, very young player who, man, when he was in his first year, I believe he was like 19 years old, like he was dominating everyone. So I think that's the right pick. 18 Seattle. I'm going to go ahead and not overthink it. Just take Gray Zabel, versatile interior offensive lineman who can also play tackle. Fits their scheme quite nicely. It just kind of feels like it's a match made in heaven. All right, 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think I could take Jahdae Barron here. And then maybe this moves like a Tyke Smith or moves a couple people around. With the way the board fell, I would have loved to have taken Jahad Campbell. I guess I also could go Donovan Ezaraku here as well to, you know, kind of give a premier quote unquote pass rusher for this defense, because this team could really use a true 3-4 style outside linebacker sort of guy, and that's what this team would kind of use him as. So it's between Jahdae Barron and Donovan Ezaraku. I have a higher grade on Jahdae Barron, but I think the secondary is better than their defensive line, especially in the edge rushing room. Although they did add some pieces in the offseason, but there's still some question marks there. But I have Jahdae Barron a lot higher than Ezaraku on my personal big board. So, and you took Chris Boswell last year. I'm going to take Jahdae Barron. I'm going to mix it up here. I'll take Jahdae Barron. We'll put him in the nickel. We'll move Tyke Smith somewhere else, probably safety or maybe even corner. We'll take Jahdae Barron here to really kind of finish up that secondary there for them. All right, Tampa Bay's on the board here, and I think with Amari Hampton and some of these receivers on the board, it's got to be one of these guys. I do know Colston Loveland's still here, but you did take Evan Ingram, so I kind of feel like that addresses that spot pretty nicely. I'm going to take Amari Hampton here. I just think he's the best player on the board, especially with one of their positions of need. They need a go-to running back, and I think Hampton would be the guy. All right, 21, I think the Steelers would take Shador. I did hear they had a meeting, and it did not go well, but granted, we hear some of that stuff all the time, and then it ends up just kind of being, you know, not the greatest of references when it comes to mock drafts. So I'm not going to worry too much about it, because it was funny. I heard a report that Tomlin liked Shador, and then right after I heard that the meeting went terribly. So who knows? I kind of think that it went fine. I'm not too worried about the meeting. I'll take Shador Sanders here for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I don't know if even Aaron Rodgers is going to sign there. So we'll take Shador there. All right, Chargers. This makes my life pretty easy. I'm taking Colston Loveland. I mean, it's Michigan, Harbaugh. They need a tight end. It's just a perfect connection there. Packers are on the board here, and I'm going to take a receiver here. I'm a big fan of Matthew Golden. Of these three guys, I'm a bigger fan of Matthew Golden. It's a very small margin, but I'll take Matthew Golden here to be a true, hopefully go-to target for Jordan Love. All right, 24 goes to the Minnesota Vikings, and Malachi Starks fell right into their lap. I think he's the best player still on the board here, and I think he fixes a pretty major need for them in the secondary. Harrison Smith's just getting older. Malachi can be a plug-and-play player wherever you want him, so I'll take Malachi Starks here. 25 is the Houston Texans, and the board fell quite nicely for them. I mean, you could still take Josh Simmons to be your young offensive lineman of the future. You could even go with a Josh Connerly. Maybe you could go receiver. I think of the board, how it went, I think I'll take Josh Simmons. Yes, the leg injury is concerning, but that is an offensive line that needs multiple positions of help. And if the worst case scenario, if he's not ready to go in year one, you sit him for a year, let him learn behind some veterans, and then year two, he becomes your future starting tackle. So I think Josh Simmons, if healthy, would have been a top 15 pick. So I just think it makes the most sense. All right, 26 is the LA Rams pick here, and I don't want to say the board fell poorly for them, but I don't think it went too badly here. I actually kind of think this might be a trade down spot, because their biggest needs, I would say, are maybe a tight end, a linebacker, and like a cornerback one, maybe a young offensive tackle to develop. But I just think that maybe it also could end up being a quarterback, because Matthew Stafford's only getting older. We also saw that there was some, conversation about Matthew Stafford not being their quarterback next year. So maybe there's a team who would trade up. I guess the question would be, what would they trade up for? With Shador Sanders off the board, I don't think the Giants or Browns would trade up here to get a quarterback. The team that would be the Giants, because if they're like, we want Jalen Milroe, and they think the Browns might take him, then they would jump them. I just don't think that would happen. I mean, the Giants do have additional draft capital now. So the Giants could be in a scenario where they took Tyler Warren in round one. Maybe now they trade up to get Jackson Dart or Milroe, and then the Rams would trade back, and then they would take like a Tyler Shock or a Will Howard. Probably not Will Howard. I don't know. I feel like I'm in like a really weird spot here for this pick. If there would be a team to trade up, it would be the Giants, but I just don't think that would make a lot of sense for the Giants to do so, because they could sit here. Let's say the Rams don't take a quarterback here, which I wouldn't do, by the way. And if the Browns were to take a quarterback, because I think they will, they are probably going to end up taking, I would assume the Browns would take Dart, and I guess maybe that leaves the Giants with Milroe. Okay, we'll leave it how it is here. All that for nothing. Yeah, I don't know what I'm actually gonna do here for the Rams. I actually do not know because the board is interesting. I think I might go corner here and bank on Trey Amos. Yeah, I think I'll just take Trey Amos here. Yeah, Trey Amos, good fit for the team. They need a cornerback, an outside corner. I think he could probably end up being their go-to guy. All right, I'm up here with the Baltimore Ravens at pick 27, and I think I just take Donovan Ezeraku here. They could really use a go-to pass rusher. Kyle Van Noy is just getting a little bit older. I could go James Pierce Jr. here as well, but I'm a little bit higher on Donovan Ezeraku, so I'll take Donovan here for them. All right, Detroit at pick 28. With the way the board fell for them, I kind of am considering Luther Burden here and maybe seeing if he could play a bit more on the outside. And then Jameson Williams would be your big play threat, bit more of a weapon. Burden could be opposite of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think, though, if they were to take a receiver, it might be a big physical receiver, more like a Jaden Higgins or an Alec Ayamainer. Maybe they could take one of those guys here and they have them go above Burden or Emeka Egbuka. I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen. Because if you go down the board here for them, if they end up at pick 60, those guys aren't going to be there more than likely. So they're probably looking at Trey Harris, which actually kind of would be kind of fun. But I don't know if Goff would like him as a receiver. Just don't think his play style would mesh well with Goff. I don't know. This is really interesting here in terms of what you could do. You could even go edge rusher. And I think I might just take an edge rusher here. I mean, Shamar Stewart is still on the board. Maybe the Lions think they can develop him. I kind of feel like they need a guy who can instantly be a productive player. I worry about the character concerns of James Pierce Jr. for Detroit. I just don't think that they would want a guy with character concerns, even if they're legit or not. I just don't think they would want that. Shamar Stewart, I think, might be my pick here. I think he'll be the pick there. I think it was either him going here or him going to Washington. All right, again, this is what I would do mock draft. I'm taking Luther Burden. I'm sorry. I've seen Washington fans not love this pick in the past, but I think it just makes the most sense. You have Deebo Samuel as like your versatile weapon, Luther Burden in the slot, but also can move around and play multiple positions, and then Terry McLaurin on the outside. I mean, you want to put together an offense that's just nasty. I also think round 2, you take a running back like Trayvon Henderson, and I just think you finish up that offense and it's looking really sharp. You also could go offensive line there too, but I just would love to add Luther Burden. All right, 30, the Buffalo Bills here. I'm going to take James Pierce Jr. I know there's some character concerns, but his play style, I think, would match very nicely to what the Buffalo Bills could use, which would just be a guy on the outside who can be a disruptor, make some plays. And I think when it's all said and done, we might look back at this pick and be like, why did he fall to pick 30? Like, was his character concerns that worrying? It could end up kind of falling that way. So we'll put James Pierce Jr. there. All right, 31 Chiefs. I think that if this was the board, they would just take Josh Connerly. I know that they addressed the tackle position in the draft, but I'm not too certain, in the offseason, but I'm not too certain that's going to work out. I'll take Josh Connerly there to be sort of a safe play for that offensive line. And then 32 is the Philadelphia Eagles. I've heard so many Eagles fans want this, and it's Nicky Bonwari. I'm sorry, I'm just not high on Nicky Bonwari, especially at 32. If this is me, this pick comes down to a few players: Emeka Egbuka, Lamar Norman Lott. Man, you can even talk me into a Mykal Williams. So I think this team might feel a bit more comfortable taking an edge rusher a bit later because they've developed them so nicely in the past. So I'm gonna have to say maybe sorry to Mykal. He might fall just a smidge here. Man, if this is my pick, I'm taking Emeka Egbuka. I'm taking Emeka because you have AJ Brown who could do more of your outside deep threat stuff. Devontae Smith can also play on the outside. And then there's Emeka Egbuka who could just be an absolute nightmare underneath. And yeah, good luck stopping that three-headed monsters in the receiving core to go along with Saquon Barkley and a great offensive line. Oh, and by the way, Jalen Hurts can also run. Yeah, good luck with that. I'm taking Emeka Egbuka there. All right, 33, the Cleveland Browns are on the board. I am not high on Jackson Dart. I'm actually a little bit higher on Will Howard. But again, I don't think he would be the pick here. So I'm not gonna do too much of what I would do here. I'll take Jackson Dart. I'll take Jackson Dart. I think he needs a year to develop, but I think he could probably learn on the fly. I think he'd be a good fit within the system. I'm not the biggest guy on Jackson Dart, but I think that the Browns might be a team that would be willing to take a chance on him. All right, the Giants are on the board here. They took Tyler Warren round 1. I think I'm going to take my quarterback in Jalen Milroe. I think that could be a fun combination of just two unique playmakers with Milroe and Tyler Warren. And also Tyler Warren could just be a safety blanket for Jalen Milroe for his entire career. So I think that would be a nice pick up there. All right, Titans took Cam Ward. I think I might lean towards taking a receiver, and I think if I were to take one, it might be a Jaden Higgins to pair him up with Calvin Ridley. So we'll take Jaden Higgins, who I am very high on. I have Jaden Higgins as I believe my wide receiver 4. All right, the Jaguars took Ted McMillan after a trade down. They actually have 2 picks here because of the trade down, so we're gonna have a little bit of some fun here with Jacksonville. I'm gonna take an interior defensive lineman here, and I think that it might end up being Derek Harmon. Yeah, I'll take Derek Harmon. He easily could be a first-round pick. Arguably, he could end up being the pick as early as pick 21, but he fell right into my lap, so I'll take Derek Harmon here. All right, Raiders took Armand Membu last time. I think I have to take a running back this time, and I'm looking at Quinshaw Judkins. They already have Raheem Mostert, who might be a bit more of your speedster, and then Quinshaw Judkins would be a bit more of your first and second down guy. 38, we have the New England Patriots, and they in round 1 took Will Campbell. I think I might go receiver here, and I think Alec Ayomane actually kind of is like a perfect pickup here for them because they already have obviously Kendrick Bourne, I meant to say. And then of course you have Stephon Diggs, but then Alec Ayomane can be a bit more of your outside guy. Well-sized, I think he'd be a fun player for Drake May to throw the ball up to. Win 50-50 ball. So we'll take Alec Ayomane there. All right, Chicago came away with Ashton Jeanty. Only one pick here because of the trade down to get Ashton Jeanty, but I'm not too worried about it. This is a team that could basically go all in right now. And I'm going to take Mykel Williams. He fell right into their laps. Or Braden Swinson. I'm higher on Braden Swinson. I feel like people are going to want me to go Mykel. I think I'll take... I'm higher on Braden. If this was what I would do, I'm taking Braden Swinson. I think Braden Swinson can go round 1, and I have no issue with it. All right, the Saints took Jalen Walker last time, so that kind of addressed a huge need for them. They could take a receiver, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not with the way the board fell there. Man, they could go quarterback. Yeah, they could go quarterback. I might take Tyler Shock here or Will Howard. If this is what I would do, I would take Will Howard. I'm higher on Will Howard, but the NFL seems to be a lot higher on Tyler Shock, so we'll take Tyler Shock here for the Saints. They need a quarterback. Like, they desperately need one, so we'll take Tyler Shock there. I don't hate that. All right, Jaguars so far have been killing the draft with Tet and Derek Harmon. I think I might take a running back here, and if I do, I think I'm going to take Trevion Henderson. Him and Tank Bigsby. I'm just not a believer in ETN right now. I'm going to take Trevion. Why not? He doesn't have to take the full-on workload. You have sort of 3 guys who can sort of do that, and then once ETN is gone, Henderson kind of moves into that RB1 role. Yeah, let's go for it. Jets took Mason Graham round 1. I think now you have to take a tackle, and fortunately for them, I don't know if the board felt great for them in terms of tackles, but Donovan Jackson is here. He can play guard, probably not tackle. I think I might lean Ariante Ursary here because I think he can play right tackle for this team. I know he's played left tackle his whole career, but I think he can move over to right tackle. Of the guys on the board here, he is the one I'm most confident outside of Ozzie. I guess Ozzie could also be the pick here. I'm a big fan of Ozzie. He has played right tackle before. You know what? Screw it. I'm actually going to take Ozzie Trapilo here because I think he's better suited as a right tackle, and I think he might go a little bit higher than what maybe his consensus might be. All right, the Niners took Walter Nolan in round 1, and the board fell really nicely for them because they could just sit and take Donovan Jackson here, who's going to play probably guard for them, but maybe could stick at tackle. Probably not, though. Cowboys took Will Johnson last time. I think running back and receiver has to be the pick here. I've heard that Dallas is okay with Damian Martinez in round 3, but Caleb Johnson and Dylan Sampson is here too. But I might go receiver. Obviously, the board has not been terribly nice for Dallas in both picks, but maybe you feel okay about taking a Kyle Williams here, who not the biggest guy in the world, 6 foot 186, but man, he can run. And you pair him with CeeDee Lamb on the inside. But do they need a speedster? Because they already have Kevontae Turpin. So I don't know, actually. I think I might just take the running back. I like the value a bit more at running back here. And if I were to pick one, I'd probably go Caleb Johnson. So we'll take Caleb Johnson there. All right, the Colts took Jahad Campbell last time. I think now this is the Mason Taylor pick. I am a lot higher on Taylor than I am Arroyo, so I'm going to take Mason Taylor here. All right, Falcons at 46 here in round 1. They took Mike Green. Maybe you double down and take another one here. I'm not going to do so. I'm going to take a linebacker. I think I might take Demetrius Knight because this team, I feel like maybe use another linebacker. Maybe I could also go cornerback. And you know what? Actually, I think I might end up taking a cornerback here instead because there's a lot of really good corners here. Of the guys available, I think Maxwell Hairston, the NFL might be a little bit higher on just because Benjamin Morrison's hip injury is a little concerning. So we'll take Maxwell Hairston there. I think I might take another cornerback here. In fact, I think I might see a nice little run of corners here because the Cardinals could use a cornerback. And I think with the way the board fell, I might take the upside of Benjamin Morrison, who might need a year or a couple weeks to heal a bit longer, but he has the highest upside of the guys here to still be a true cornerback 1. So we'll take Benjamin Morrison there. All right, the Dolphins took Kelvin Banks. I'm of 2 minds. I could take a cornerback to replace Ramsey and Siobhan Revell or Azariah Thomas, or I could go with an interior defensive lineman, which is what I think I might do here. And I think I'll take Omar Norman-Lott, like a true difference maker up the middle, although maybe they might be a bit more inclined to find somebody who might be a little bit better against the run. So yeah, actually, I'm going to switch my train of thought here. Omar's a bit more of a pass rusher. Tyleek's a bit more of a run stuffer. Alexander's a little bit older, and I think this Dolphins team might be a little bit wise to go a little bit younger. So I'm going to go with TJ Sanders here. 5 sacks last year, solid against the run, 6'4", 290. Could maybe put on a bit more weight, but I'm going to take TJ Sanders there. All right, the Bengals are on the board here. They took Nick Scorton round 1. I might take Omar Norman-Lott to just be a disruptor up the middle and create some havoc on the quarterback. I'm going to take Omar Norman-Lott. I'm gonna double down on defensive line there. All right, the Seahawks took Gray Zabel last time. I think they could potentially be interested in a receiver, but there's no receiver with great size, so I'm gonna say no to that one. I think I'm gonna take Michael Williams. I think the fall for Michael is gonna stop here. I know they don't really need an edge rusher because they just brought in DeMarcus Lawrence, but D-Law has dealt with injuries in the past. Maybe you want to go with somebody else who can kind of fill in that role. I'll take Michael here. Yeah, we'll take Michael. Why not? All right, the Broncos took Amari Hampton last time. I think this time maybe you're looking at a receiver, and I'm loving Jack Betch there. I'm loving Jack Betch. I think his play style with Bo Nix and what they already have with Sean Payton there, I'm gonna go with Jack Betch. I'm gonna go with him there. I love that pick. Seahawks took Gray Zabel and Micah Williams. I could go safety here. I could get down with that with either Watts or Winston. I could even go back into maybe a tackle like Ariante Ursary, just because there's constant injuries along this offensive line. So maybe I just want to shore that up. And Bao, I think, moves a bit more inside to play guard. He's a little bit lighter, barely gets over 300 pounds. Jonas Savaiania, maybe, but I think he's more of a guard. Wyatt Milam too. But I don't know if Ursary is the greatest scheme fit, but I think I'll take him here just to be a swing tackle who maybe can move inside, kind of shore up that offensive line completely there. So we'll take Ursary. I don't love the way the board fell, but I'll take Ursary. All right, Tampa Bay 53. They took Jahdae Barron. I'm not going to overthink this one and take the linebacker here. I'm going to take Demetrius Knight. They could really use a linebacker, especially with Levante David. That linebacking core was not good last year. Levante David's just getting older. All right, Packers took Matthew Golden. I think I might take Shavon Ravel or Landon Jackson. One of the two. I'm gonna go with Ravel. I just think he has the higher upside. Hopefully that ACL injury is okay. They desperately need a corner as well. Kind of fixes two major issues right there with the first 2 rounds. All right, Chargers took Colston Loveland. I think now you got to find an edge. And if I'm gonna pick between Jackson, JT, and Princely, if I'm looking for a pass rusher, I might lean towards Princely. But if I'm looking for a safer play, I might go JT. This team might be smarter to go with the upside of Princely though. I mean, just a lot of pass rush variation. 11 sacks last year. 255, good size. I think he could be their guy. I'll go with Princely here. I'll take Princely. All right, the Buffalo Bills took James Pierce Jr. I think they could use a run stuffer up the middle, and fortunately for them, it kind of worked out nicely because I think there's 2 Ohio State players that I might end up taking at 56 and 62. I want to take Tyleek Williams. Can be a run stuffer up the middle while also creating a little bit of some disruption up the middle. All right, Giants have taken Tyler Warren and Jalen Milroe. Kind of think I have to take an offensive lineman here. I mean, Tyler Booker's still on the board. Is he the greatest fit? I don't know. I'll take Tyler Booker. Why not? I also consider Jared Wilson there as well. Next, it was the Houston Texans who took Josh Simmons round 1. I kind of think I could even double down. Maybe I could go safety here as well, but probably not because they just brought in Mari Laster last year, played corner. You obviously have Derek Stingley. You brought in CJ Gardner-Johnson. Probably not. I'm kind of tempted to double down on offensive line, but at the same time, I think I might go Kyle Williams or Jalen Royals. Royals would be a bit more in the slot, which maybe they could use because I guess Christian Kirk can kind of do multiple things, but Trey Harris is also here too. I'm going to take Trey Harris. Could be a deep threat. CJ Stroud can just throw him up the ball. 50-50 balls. He could win some of those. I'll do that there. All right, Baltimore at pick 59. They took Donovan Ezaraku in the first round. I think I might take lineman here, and I think I might take Jonas Savaiania. Yeah, I'll do that. I also would have considered a safety there too to move Kyle Hamilton around, but we'll be fine there. All right, Lions at pick 60. They took Shamar Stewart in round 1. I know I talked about receiver, getting them a big, lengthy receiver, but the board did not fall very nicely for them. I guess I could take Torrey Horton, but that's probably a bit more for round 3, maybe early round 4 type of pick there. They don't really need a safety. Maybe I could go Carson Schlesinger. I don't know. This is such a weird spot because this Lions team is just really good. They don't really need a safety, but maybe they could just go with the versatility of a Nicky Monwori or Kevin Winston. I don't know. I mean, this team doesn't really need a safety though. Like this team doesn't have too many major issues at all. I just don't really know what to take here from. I guess I might go offensive lineman here. And I think I might go with Wyatt Milam. I mean, Tate Ratledge, is he their style of guard? Had some injuries last year, 320 pounds. I don't know. I might take Wyatt Milam's a little bit low on here. I'm a little bit higher on Milam. He's in my top 75. I'm going to do Wyatt Milam. I'll do Milam because I think he might be a bit more of just a solid guard. Can fill in nicely. I'll go Wyatt Milam. All right, Washington took Luther Burden last time. I'm going to take Landon Jackson here to have off the edge. I like Landon Jackson a lot. Nice little solid run defender. Good against in the pass department as well. So I'm going to take Landon Jackson. And I talked a bit earlier about what I might do for them, but I think I might pivot. I was going to go JT Tuimoloau, but you took James Pierce Jr. already. I think I might just go, I mean, did they take a corner? They haven't taken a corner yet. I might go Azariah Thomas here. Yeah, I'm going to go Azariah Thomas, who I'm a little bit higher on. long, lengthy cornerback. Reminds me a little bit of Rasul Douglas, so we'll take him there. All right, Chiefs went with Josh Connerly. I think they could be in the market for safety after losing Justin Reed. Of these guys, I'll go Nicky Monwari. Just feels like he's a little bit higher on boards for them than maybe on my board. And last, the Philadelphia Eagles. I think I'm going to finish this off with, I guess I could go with Xavier Watts. I'll take Xavier Watts, be a CJ Gardner-Johnson replacement. All right, so this is my first round mock draft. You guys let me know in the comment section below what picks you disagree or agree with. And if you enjoy, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.